You are choosing between two holidays. The first has a lower headline price, the second is more expensive, but it says all-inclusive. You choose the second one. You are paying for certainty. That is what the premium is for. Not the food, not the hotel, not the pool. Those are available in both options. The premium is specifically for the absence of surprises at checkout. You book. British Airways takes you there, TUI runs the resort. The bill at the end is not what the screen showed at the start. The phrase all-inclusive was doing different work than you thought. The phrase all-inclusive has a specific commercial history. It did not emerge from marketing departments as a vague aspiration. It emerged as a defined consumer proposition. One price, paid up front, covering flights, accommodation, food, drink, and transfers. No bill at the resort bar, no surprise charge at checkout, no luggage screen between you and your confirmed booking. The proposition carried a price premium precisely because certainty has a market value, and the market had spent decades establishing what that certainty included. That proposition is now doing different work. The term remains. The premium remains. The certainty does not. The mechanism that produced this outcome has a regulatory name: drip pricing, the practice of advertising a headline price and disclosing mandatory or near-mandatory additional charges progressively through the booking funnel at the points in the purchase journey where the consumer is least likely to abandon the transaction. The psychology is not incidental to the design. The funnel is built around the moment at which mental commitment outweighs the cost of stopping. By the time the luggage screen appears, you have already chosen the destination, the hotel, the dates, and the room category. The cost of stopping is no longer zero. The designers of the funnel know that. The pricing of the add-ons reflects it. TUI marketed holidays as all-inclusive. Sunweb marketed holidays as all-inclusive. Both charge separately for checked baggage. This is not a characterization of their pricing architecture. It is a description of the documented record. A consumer booking what was presented as an all-inclusive holiday encountered a luggage charge that the headline proposition had implicitly guaranteed would not exist. The Advertising Standards Authority did not need to speculate about whether this was misleading. The advertisement said all-inclusive. The price did not include all. The gap between those two things is the complaint. The ASA's complaints mechanism requires a specific evidentiary threshold. A third party, a consumer, a competitor, or the ASA's own monitoring operation must document the representation and demonstrate that it is likely to mislead a consumer acting on it in good faith. Likely, not certain. The harm is located at the point of presentation, not at the point of purchase. This is the same architecture that governs trade dress law, consumer protection regulation, and every misleading advertising standard in the developed regulatory world. The harm begins at the design stage. The complaint against TUI was upheld. The specific representation, all-inclusive, applied to a product that excluded checked baggage from the headline price, failed the cap code. The ruling was not ambiguous. The ASA found that the advertisement was likely to mislead consumers about the total cost of the holiday. TUI's position that the luggage charge was disclosed in the booking terms, that consumers were informed before completing the purchase, did not satisfy the regulatory standard. Disclosure buried in terms does not neutralize a misleading headline. The headline is what the consumer acts on. The terms are what the company cites afterward. The complaint against EasyJet followed the same architecture and reached the same conclusion. The specific representation under investigation was cabin bag pricing, not checked luggage, but the bag a consumer carries onto the aircraft as a matter of routine expectation. EasyJet had advertised fares in a way the ASA determined was likely to mislead consumers about what the headline price included. The ruling was upheld. The word misleading appeared in the published finding. EasyJet offered the same defense TUI had offered. The charges were disclosed, the consumer was informed, the terms were available before purchase completion. That defense does not survive the regulatory record, not because either ruling is individually conclusive, but because the same defense was advanced by two different carriers before the same regulator in response to two different complaints filed in the same period, and it failed both times for the same underlying reason. The ASA did not find that the terms were hidden. It found that the presentation was misleading. Those are not the same finding, And the distinction is the entire point. A charge can be technically disclosed and structurally obscured simultaneously. The funnel is designed to make that possible. Here is how the industry characterized its position. Fare structures are complex, consumer journeys involve multiple screens and multiple choices, and no single headline price can capture every variable in a modern airline booking. The additional charges are not hidden. They are presented at the appropriate stage of the booking process. The consumer retains full choice at every point. That characterization is accurate in its narrow reading of the mechanics and dishonest in its reading of the psychology. The appropriate stage of the booking process is by design the stage at which walking away carries the highest psychological cost. That is not a neutral interface decision. This is the coldest part of the story. EasyJet's revenue per seat rose by approximately 1/3 in under 6 months. The company's own financial reporting attributed that growth primarily to ancillary fee income, not passenger volume, not new routes, not fuel savings passed through to the operating margin. The number attached to every seat sold increased by 1/3, and the mechanism that produced the increase was the unbundling of services that the headline fare had previously implied were included. 1/3. That is not a rounding error in the accounts, that is the product. TUI's architecture replicates this model across the package holiday category, which carries a stronger consumer expectation of price certainty than scheduled aviation. A scheduled fare was always understood to be a base price. A package holiday marketed as all-inclusive was understood to be something categorically different. A fixed cost proposition, a closed financial loop, a product whose entire premium rested on the guarantee that the number on the booking screen was the number you would pay. Applying the ancillary fee model to that product does not merely add a charge, it hollows out the proposition that justified the premium. British Airways operates the same fee architecture across a carrier whose brand proposition is built on the premise that you are paying for a complete and premium service. The add-on revenue model does not become more transparent because the seats are upholstered differently. It becomes, if anything, more dissonant because the premium fare already priced in the expectation of completeness and the ancillary charge extracts a second payment for a component the first payment had implied was settled. The Department for Business and Trade opened a formal public consultation specifically targeting hidden airline fees. That consultation represents the first acknowledgement by a UK government body that this constitutes a defined and nameable practice requiring regulatory attention. The document names drip pricing. It names the progressive disclosure of mandatory charges. It names the gap between headline price and total cost as a consumer harm the existing enforcement regime has not adequately addressed. What the consultation does not yet contain is a remedy. It contains a question. The industry's response to that question will be submitted, considered, and eventually reflected in a government response that may or may not produce legislation on a timeline that is not measured in months. In the interval, the model continues. What a consultation produces is a process. Evidence is gathered. Industry submissions are filed, consumer groups respond, a government response is published. If the political arithmetic holds across the full duration of that process, the response may contain a commitment to legislation or a strengthened enforcement mandate for an existing regulator or a voluntary code the industry is invited to adopt. Each of those outcomes sits on a different point of the effectiveness spectrum, and none of them is available. At the moment, you are moving through a booking funnel at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night, having already chosen the hotel and the dates and the room. That interval, the checked baggage charge continues to appear on holidays, marketed as all-inclusive. The cabin bag fee continues to be disclosed at the stage of the funnel where abandonment carries the highest psychological cost. The revenue per seat figure continues to reflect the distance between what the headline price implied and what the total cost delivered. The consultation does not pause the arithmetic, it documents it. The consumer trust question this pricing architecture forces into the open is not whether the charges are technically disclosed. They are. The question is what the consumer was purchasing when they selected the all-inclusive option and paid the premium it commanded. They were not purchasing a holiday, They were purchasing the absence of further decisions. The premium was specifically for the closed financial loop. The proposition that the number on the screen was the number that settled the account. The ancillary fee model does not add charges to a holiday. It sells the holiday twice, once at the headline price and once at the funnel. The argument TUI and EasyJet would offer in response is that their customers are informed adults, that the charges are visible before purchase completion, that the consumer retains full choice at every screen. That argument fails at the luggage screen. Consumer decisions inside a booking funnel are not made by rational actors conducting a fresh cost-benefit analysis at each stage. They are made by people who have already committed mentally and emotionally to the destination and the dates, and who are now moving through a sequence of screens designed by people who understood that commitment and priced around it. The funnel did not arrive at its current architecture by accident. It was designed toward the moment of least resistance. The ASA found the presentations misleading. The Department for Business and Trade named the practice in a formal consultation. EasyJet's own accounts recorded a 1/3 rise in revenue per seat driven by ancillary fees. Each of those facts points in the same direction. The probability that 3 carriers independently arrived at the same fee architecture applied to the same consumer proposition, producing the same regulatory outcomes through unrelated design decisions uninfluenced by the revenue potential of the model, is not a matter of interpretation. It approaches zero. You are back at the booking screen. The phrase all-inclusive is still there. The price is still there. The luggage is still not included in either of them. The confirmation email will arrive, and then the second email will arrive, and the screen will present you with a charge for the bag you were already planning to bring, at a price set by people who calculated exactly how far into the funnel you would need to be before that charge felt cheaper than starting again. The screen did not change. Your understanding of what it was designed to do did. That is not a pricing oversight. That is a revenue model with a consultation budget built into it.